Hi, everybody. This is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, and you're listening to... Oh, I got to start over. Sorry. Scratch that.
Okay.
Boy, I screwed that up. I thought I was doing a podcast there for a minute. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Hi, this is Dave Hodges of the Common Sense Show, where we are freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. And really pleased to be bringing you this updated message from Paul Martin, who's from the northern Colorado area. And certainly we have covered a lot about military movements, Russian Spetsnaz, and so forth. Paul, welcome to the show. Glad you could join us. You have an update with regard to some of our past stories in which we've covered foreign troop movements in northern Colorado and all the way down into the Denver area. What have you got for us?
I had a good friend, former Navy, former police officer up in Ohio, lieutenant police officer, just guy sees everything. They were heading down to Arvada yesterday and mid-morning to go see his daughter, and he spotted 40 military vehicles that he had never seen before in his life. It was a weird desert camo with splotches of green in it. They were broken up into about 6 or 7 groups going northbound. He saw them about just north of Denver, about Brighton.
Mm-hmm. And, Arvada, we should mention to the listeners, Arvada is a northwest suburb of metropolitan Denver. And, Brighton.
Yeah,
Brighton is more like northeast rural, kind of like how I live compared to Phoenix.
Yeah, and but he had never seen these vehicles before, and I'm thinking about a year ago, I saw it. I was heading up to Cheyenne, and it was a four-wheel, rubber-wheeled vehicle that had bubbles all over it and little antennas sticking up everywhere. And I've got God rest his soul, he's passed on, Mike McNulty, that did all the Waco movies, and he's a kind of a nut on that kind of stuff. And so I called Mike and I said, and told him what I saw, and he said, that's a sniffer. It's a biological nuclear sniffer. And I go, really? Yeah. He said, there's only one place they make them, and that's in Germany. And it was a little bit more of a woodland camo, but it had splotches of green. And of course, this is a semi-arid zone up here, so there's a lot of brown here in northern Colorado. And my friend had never seen, he's been around the world with the Navy. And so with the thing that really piqued my interest was the splotches of green with a weird desert camo. He thought they might have been Israeli, but with the green splotches, my thoughts were they could have been possibly German vehicles. I mean, God knows what they are, but the fact that they're, it just adds on to the list of things that of foreign nationals and foreign military that we have here in northern Colorado. So
let me interject. Go ahead, Paul.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is UN, regardless of how you cut it. When you're dealing with foreign military and they're on our soil, they're here to assist in any kind of civil war action on a side that the UN will choose. And I want to emphasize that very clearly, on the side that the UN will choose. Let's just back up real quick. For the listeners, do you have Russian Spetsnaz in your area?
Oh, absolutely. We have for 3 or 4 years. Common
knowledge in your area, correct?
Well, with people in the know, it is. I mean, I don't know if Larimer County Sheriff's Department knows that they're Spetsnaz, but they know one of the officers that runs from Estes Park down south to Allen Park is kind of his territory. And he was telling a friend of mine that's an armorer former military armor that has his own business, and that he had just asked him. He said, "You see any Russians up there?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, they're up there. We don't like them very much. They're not very nice people." And he had dropped off a weapon to have worked on. And when he came back to pick up the weapon, my buddy asked him, "Do you see anything else on those Russians?" He said, "Yeah, they're bringing in their women." And but yeah, I've had people that have spotted them at the subway in Estes Park. A friend of mine, him and his wife and his daughter were up there just lounging around and stopped by Subway to get a sandwich. And there was 4 very well buffed out young men, and they were speaking Russian to each other. And they got up to order their sandwiches, and they just broke into perfect Johnny Carson, Nebraska English.
Yeah, and this is exactly what we see in the TV series on FX called The Americans, and this is a direction we need to go, Paul. And here's what I'm talking about with The Americans. They're entering season 5, I believe, sometime this spring. And I binged watched over some brief vacation I had recently the first 3 seasons. And I had seen part of season 4 reruns, but I didn't catch the whole thing. But now I kind of know what it's all about. It's about 2 KGB agents trained from very young childhood to be perfect American plants. They're brought here in very early adulthood. They are expected to mate, which they do. They have 2 children by their union. The children know nothing about their parents' activities, which include treason against the United States, spying and espionage, murder, kidnapping, embezzlement. I mean, you name it, they're doing it all. But they are the heroes of the show. These 2 KGB agents, they coincidentally live across the street from an FBI counterintelligence agent. And these agents basically are displayed as bumbling fools. It's a total communist propaganda show. No question about it. Now, let me circle the wagons here. What we're seeing with this military movement ties back in large part to the Russians. They can be satellite forces. But, Paul, what I'm going to embark on is I've been asked by a high-level source, as well as a colleague, Mike Adams, to request for me to reopen my investigation into Russian subversion within our government. And I've been reviewing some information this evening, and this is why I wanted to take this on the air with you and your sighting, because we're being set up. We have lots of Congress people, mostly Democrats, who have allegiance to communist organizations. And before I'm done with this series, I am going to name names with the associated groups that they're affiliated with, some of them directly to the American Communist Party. And I'll give you a little teaser here. It should be no surprise to anybody. Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are at the top of the list.
Wow. Well, that doesn't surprise me a bit about Mr. Sanders, and it kind of really doesn't surprise me about Mr. Biden. But, I mean, you got to go back to Khrushchev talking to Eisenhower. We'll take you without a shot.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm going to go tomorrow with my article that I'm writing with regard to what the Russian defectors told us. They told us how this was going to go down. And what we're seeing now with all this traffic you have in northern Colorado, it's just one more incident, extending down to the Denver metro area. Paul, I've received 3 emails in the last, 6-7 days that detail the kind of thing that you're describing here tonight. I'm talking average John Doe driving down Interstate 25 between Fort Collins and Denver, and they see these massive convoys. They are omnipresent, Paul. They're not infrequent. They're everyday things.
Well, it was the day after when you came up, the night we had dinner in Denver, and then the next day I had a friend that was heading to South Denver towards Parker, and the traffic was just terrible, and it was the wrong time of day for the traffic to be terrible. And so he started getting off and bobbing and weaving and heading south. and he got back to trying to get back on the I-25, and there was a pretty fairly long train of white UN vehicles heading southbound about Parker.
You know, I keep asking myself, why Colorado? And I have to tell you, Paul, that Colorado, as you know, is going to be the new Washington, D.C. when D.C. is taken out. You're aware of that, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I've known that since the 90s.
It's interesting because when I moved to the Phoenix metropolitan area in 1985, I was told by a friend of mine who was stationed at NORAD, Cheyenne Mountain. He said, you're leaving at the right time, Dave. He says, there's going to come a time when living in Colorado is going to become very toxic. And that was his words. And how did I know this person? Because I was his son's basketball coach at a high school. And he just said things are really unraveling in our military. He said they're unraveling in our government. And he said people think that Joseph McCarthy was crazy about the communist infiltration. He said no, he wasn't. The man was an alcoholic, and this was used to discredit him, but he was on the money with what he said. The man who told me that, Paul, was a full bird colonel in Air Force intelligence.
Wow.
And
well,
I've never forgotten that. When I came down here, I thought, how odd is that? And now I'm seeing this. I mean, this has been going on in Colorado for a long time. I mean, you look at the Agenda 21 regulations that came out under the Gang of Four. You can't trap rainwater. Now, recently they've relented on that only to a small degree. And the restrictions on energy use and use of your land and watering and irrigating your farmland. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing in Colorado. But we know, too, that the CIA has moved their headquarters there. Well, that's not well advertised, but it's underground, adjacent to DIA. Are you aware of that, too, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. I figured you would be, being from that area, but that's something I've known about, I think probably 4 or 5 years now. So
yeah, I had a good friend that was ran an electrician crew during the building of the airport. Real good friend of mine, kind of a fellow cowboy, rodeo through high school and stuff like I did. So, yeah, he had quite a lot of tales to tell about that. But, yeah, we're getting set up. We were talking off air, and with everything we've discussed so far, they may I don't know if they're going to get World War III started before the inauguration, but they may let Trump get his train on the tracks, but I think they're going to take it off.
I think you're probably right. We have information, and I discussed this with Mike Adams earlier in the day. I received some information from a source. Mike Adams had some of this information too. 5,000 National Guard to be shipped into the D.C. area for the inauguration, but also 5,000 federal officers as well, making a total of 10,000. And I reported yesterday that Bill Ayers has basically entered into an agreement with George Soros to help disrupt the inauguration. Well, his big thing is bombs. That's what he went to prison for when he was out of the Weatherman Underground. And what I understand is they think the plan is to detonate bombs on the periphery of the inauguration, knowing they can't get close, and then when the first responders come in, attack them in an ambush. That's the operating MO, and this is what led to the shipment of the 10,000 law enforcement and National Guard people into the D.C. area for the inauguration.
Well, it would. This is a world event. This inauguration is, so I cannot believe that they won't have a presence. I mean, the entire planet will be looking at this one.
It's usually inaugurations are something you watch out of the corner of your eye. Not this one.
Not this one.
I'm thankful I'll be watching it from a distance. Do you happen to know the time? I haven't looked at that. You do know the time that the inauguration is supposed to take place?
I believe it's at noon.
That's what memory tells me too. Is that
Yeah,
noon? Is that noon Eastern?
Yes.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt what I'm doing right then to make sure I watch this, because we could be watching Twin Towers kind of material. You know, it never fails to amaze me. I had awakened after the first tower had been struck, and I knew nothing about it, and started the coffee pot and turned on the TV, and I watched, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, because I saw one tower on fire, and then I watched another plane ran into the second tower. And I caught that live, and I didn't fully understand what had happened up to that point, because it was like walking into the middle of a movie and you need to get oriented. And, you know, I think the inauguration may carry some of these same situations. But I'll tell you this, I have such distrust and loathing for the mainstream media. And I don't want to call them mainstream media. Let's call them what they are. The leftist communist media, that I believe if they had explosions on the periphery, as I believe Bill Ayers is behind, I believe they wouldn't even show it. I believe that they would try to obscure as much of this as they could.
Well, I mean, the world media will be there. I mean, everybody on the planet will be there. Every news organization in the world is going to be there.
That's a good point. You're right. But here's the thing I'm wondering. If the proverbial poop hits the fan at the inauguration, do you think you're going to find out why all those foreign troops are in Colorado?
I mean, you know, you and I've talked about this on some other shows and stuff. I mean, we're in no man's land. I mean, you've got the entire global elite getting completely destroyed. You've got the waste stream media completely destroyed. I mean, CNN's below the Garden Channel. The Democratic Party is completely destroyed. If they'll ever be able to recover after the Podesta files and all the stuff that came out from that, and Hillary, and you know, these people, you know, they may be on the ropes, but they have an immense amount of money. They have a lot of nukes. They have control of, without a doubt, they have control of bioweapons. I mean, you could have a bioweapon release at the inauguration. I mean, anything's possible with these people. They're on the ropes. You know, one of my dad's saying when I was a kid, my dad used to tell me, he said, son, the most dangerous thing in the world is a cornered coward, because they don't have any other way to go but forward. And so anything is possible with these people. We're in Crazyville.
We really are. You know, I'm going to give you a little analogy here. Paul, when I was a young athlete and I was learning to play basketball and learning the principles of defending my man, I learned to keep my eyes on the guy's midsection, because the center of gravity, that person couldn't go anywhere regardless of the fakes without moving their belly. And so I used to fixate on the belly. Well, that's what Colorado is. I believe Colorado is the center of gravity for the civil unrest that's about to happen. And if people want to know when it's going to happen, look at Colorado. And all I can tell you is my mailbox gets filled with these accounts of all these movements and sighting of foreign troops in Colorado, and I get all this. Now, occasionally I get the crackpots and say, oh, I know people in Castle Rock are seeing nothing, and I know people in Fort Collins are seeing nothing. And you know, they actually go hysterical on me. But I get people, and I've published some of the pictures of this, Paul, absolutely published them, and people even still then want to deny it. But I'm telling you, Colorado is at the seat of controversy. They're the center of gravity. And when the proverbial poop is ready to hit the fan, you're going to see the signs of it in Colorado first.
Well, I think one of the things to look for, Dave, is my East Coast has said it appears to him that before the stuff hits the rotary device, the phones will go down, and more than likely the internet. I think that'll be our signal, because they're going to kill our communications. And when that goes down, if you're out of town, you're away from your family or whatever, get home as quick as you can, because I think that's going to be a huge flare for what's coming.
People like you and I might be well advised not to go to their home. I found out.
Absolutely. No, I don't. No, I've already got plans on that.
Listen, it's interesting, Paul, because Mike Adams shared this with me from one of his sources, and Mike said that had Hillary won, his sources had told him they're starting an immediate purge on the alternative media. And I never got anything that definitive. I just was told that if she's elected, you'll go dark. And I took that as a warning. So that's why I was so tireless in persecuting Hillary Clinton on my website.
Well, we're kind of radio man. If you remember the saying about the lifespan of a radio man in Vietnam was about an hour. They want to cut off communications. So, I mean, we're kind of radio men. But I would definitely pay attention to if the phones go down. I mean, they can take the whole grid down. The Chinese, our whole grid is nothing but Chinese software. We've talked about that. I met an IT tech with the U.S. Military that told me that at a birthday party. And, I mean, there's just a lot of things in play. So don't go anywhere without a bug-out bag, 3 days of food. I carry 2 really, really nice bug-out bags everywhere I go. Take your personal protection devices with you. And for the listeners out there, I mean, I know there's people who have to travel on business and all this other stuff, but for the people that don't have to get too far from home, don't do it. You know, I've talked about this before. You've talked about it in articles, and my East Coast source said, when this shoe drops, wherever you are is where you're going to stay. Yeah,
that's right. We've heard that a lot. Well, Paul, we're out of time. I want to mention that this spot has been brought to you by Numana Foods. And Numana is saving America one meal at a time. One of the tough times that could lie ahead in our future. Don't take any chances with your family's security. Go to Numana.com/Hodges. And for a short remaining time, I've been told by the owner we can go a few more days. We have a coupon code in which you can take 5% off your sale. Basically, that coupon code is Hodges NOB5. Again, the website is Numana.com/Hodges. Thank you for listening. Paul Martin, always interesting, if not disturbing. I'll not sleep well tonight, but I'm getting used to that. Thanks, Paul.